Today we are driving the all-new generation of the Audi A6, the A6 C9, and going to solve the questions: how big is the difference to the all-new Audi A5? How does this one here relate to the main competitors like Mercedes E-Class and BMW 5 Series? And especially when it's packed here, full of technology features, and with the V6, what driving experience does it deliver? A special focus on the driving experience here today with Thomas and Autogefuehl in 4K, full screen, full length. Let's go with the all-new Audi A6 with a kind of like frameless grille here in the front, at least here in the upper part. Blacked out Audi rings, this is an option. You don't have to go for this one. You can also have it in the brighter scheme. This is also the S-line, so there you have these lying L forms in the front grille. The base front grille would actually have a more open honeycomb design. The headlamps here, optional matrix LED, you can also see it right here, and it kind of has this honeycomb grid in front of that. It's interesting in the daytime running lighting scheme. The main headlamp unit then below. And this is here Madeira brown. It looks black. When you look really closer, it's dark brownish, and Madeira means wood in Portuguese. We're also in Portugal here for you today. So best greetings to our Portuguese fans as well. Wheels from 18 to 21 inch wheels. So here 21 inch, these are the biggest ones, also with the contrasting red brake caliper. Then here the black wheels, that in this case we also have everything blacked out basically. You have the S-Line badge here, yeah, the return of the badges. So we gave the feedback from you back to Audi, of course, and now they're putting more badges about S-Line and also true S models on again. Soon also more about the true S model here for the all-new Audi A6. When we have news there, we'll keep you updated on our channel. Then the Avant building type here, there will also be a sedan. The Avant, of course, especially popular in Europe, and a really like stretched look for that one, almost like a shooting brake, so to speak. Really strong hip area. The total length is 4,99 meters or 197 inches. That's 6 centimeters or 2 inches longer than before. And the length difference to the Audi A5 in the new generation, that difference is some 16 centimeters or 7 inches. So not too much, and especially the wheelbase difference between A6 and A5 is actually just 4 centimeters. Rear here with a modern signature. These are the OLEDs, organic LED as well. And there you can see this proximity sensor when you're getting too close. Think about this vehicle that a lot what you see in here is optional, especially with this vehicle. This is a top spec vehicle here because they want to show off like what can they do in the new generation. And they cannot do fake exhaust anymore because these are real exhaust tips. They're like dissolving from the real one here for the 6-cylinder engine. Quattro badge here, although there is no classic 4060 Quattro anymore. That one is basically gone with basically all the new models. They now either use a Quattro Ultra, would even be standard here for the 6-cylinder. And Quattro Ultra means that the rear axle can be uncoupled. And at the same time, the Quattro Ultra in the new generation also enables you up to 70% of the power to the rear. It's a kind of like a strange thing. So it can be rear wheel biased when you accelerate hard out of the corner, but when you're more stationary, more rolling, like on the motorway, and you don't give more throttle, then it's becoming a front wheel drive model. That's the thing. And it's working actually quite well, supposed to do that for efficiency gains. But of course, the classic Quattro system will have, let's say, more moments where it's like the distribution is more rear wheel biased in a way. That's at least what I experience. Although Audi says it's still rear wheel biased when you really push it. That's the thing, you know. So it's more flexible than before. Let's take it that way. And the thing is, however, when you go for the sports differential, which is an option here, for example, for the 3-liter TFSI V6, the Quattro sports differential basically makes it not an ultra anymore, because then the rear axle is always coupled, so it doesn't uncouple, and it has the torque distribution. So this is the logic of the new Quattro system. So either Quattro Ultra or Quattro with sports differential, and that counts for this one here. This one here makes 367 horsepower, 4.7 seconds in the acceleration figure. And then as a lower entry-level versions are the 2-liter TFSI. Front wheel drive is like a really entry-level version, or the TDI, the 2-liter TDI. That one also gets the mild hybrid plus. In Europe, you also get that here for the V6. So there's a buffer battery where you can have some recuperation, some electric moments. And later to come also the plug-in hybrids. And we also have more details about the individual engines in our data spec than in the video description. So Audi says they have reduced the noise volume on the interior by 30%. There are even tires with inside foam and so on. And what you maybe also noticed here, just from the building form here, aerodynamics is a thing. So the Avant at 0.25 in the CD value, so it's more aerodynamic than before, but should be giving some efficiency gains. Very interesting to see, by the way. Look at that. The brake light is here vertical, and then the turning indicator here in the highest trim with a cascading function. Proximity light, see there, and then this is the reverse light. See here in this integrated light strip. Yeah, so very interesting to see all of these functions. Can we have the reverse here? Yeah, there we go. One more time. There you see two reverse lights integrated there. So interesting light ideas, isn't it? Now to the interior. Key fob looks like this. Actually does the job, it's nice. Then you grab underneath here, and then there's no physical feedback for the handles. Door closing sound, it's nice in the front. See it on the rear. It's also nice. So very solid door closing sound. Here we also, it's an option of course. Here you have a magic soft close. Then instead of the doors, have some stitching here. This is also, let's say, a little bit softened up. Then we have these insert here. This is like a little softer leatherette for your elbow. Car is complaining about the key that's not in place. Here also these automatic window levers. You can also check it out here. We have a dual glazed window. There we go. Let's see if we also have it in the rear. And I would suspect that is also just an option. Then here, yeah, there we go. Also good for the insulation, of course. Yeah, this pad here, but you can see this is the pad with the whole capacitive buttons and so on. No covering at the inside of the doors pockets. Only the lower part is some rubber ground that things don't fly around that much actually. And then S-line entry sill badge, and also like this S logo on the steering wheel, perforation on the side. Here we have these illuminated, and they also do somewhat clicking sounds, for example. Audio rings are also two-dimensional instead of three-dimensional. Then the seats you can get, at least in European markets. These seats here are a mix of animal leather and leatherette. So it depends on which area you're looking at. Not all options on all markets. So especially UK and US market will be restricted again. Then here, 1.89 m. In the front, it definitely works for tall adults. And then electronic control of the steering wheel, up and down, in and out, like this. So it's nice. And the size of the steering wheel is actually pretty cool. It has a sporty atmosphere. And here we go. There you can see this passenger screen. It's an option. The thing is, if you don't have it, then it's all the way blacked out. And it's also combined with these tech packages, depending on how it is oriented in your market. This one here has the Tech Pro package, and then everything is almost included as for this, but it's also a very expensive option actually. And it's even possible to get the Bang & Olufsen sound system with speakers in the headrest. It's also here, and then you can hear, for example, the GPS voice guidance via these speakers, while the rest of the music is still playing in the front and so on. Middle console, yeah, a lot of high gloss black. I like the adaptive cup holders with a 4-dot design, integrated shifting lever. This is the S-tronic dual clutch transmission. And then in the front there's an inductive charging pad, which is also ventilated, 2 USB-C chargers, real volume jog at least for the volume. And then you have this curved unit, so to speak. And the biggest drawback, I think, is about the temperature unit, because it's placed low, but then you have this long table here, so to speak. And then I always have a problem like finding a good hand position to really click these. What's pretty cool here, by the way, is that you have a digital garage door opener that can even be combined with GPS signal. So you just approach your garage, basement garage door, and it's already open because, you know, with the GPS signal. What's also good that we still have classic stalks here behind. Also here the shifting pedals and so on. Yeah, the armrest here. It's soft enough for the elbow. May could be a little bit softer, but it's fine. And can also be adjusted in height. More space underneath. No additional charging here, but I think we also have enough. So yeah, this is more like a clean space for all the clutter. And the key fob could be put here or not, depending what you like. Oh, and the glove box, of course. Yeah, that's very smooth. And the driver POV, yeah, once again, I would wish the return of the three-dimensional OnlyRings, honestly. Then the digital instruments are somewhat adjustable. Here, when you click the view, for example, minimized or like this. And in the middle part, look at that. So this is at the moment additional speed visualization in the balanced mode. When we're going to the dynamic mode, we have the return of the RPM meter in the middle. There we go, but only in the dynamic mode. And when we are in the efficiency mode again, then we have the proper RPM meter visualization again. And then you can also order this head-up display, which is not flickering in real life. You can have also some visualizations changes here. And the main infotainment system looks like this, like the basic overview. All the car functions are also here, like display, or you can change the light signatures for exterior and for interior lighting, here also for the ambient lighting, for example. Here always back to the main menu, and then let's check out the Apple CarPlay integration. It looks like this, and Android Auto also available, and it's both wired or wireless on demand. And by the way, here on the favorite button, you can actually assign a shortcut for this speed beeping stuff, you know, when you exceed by 1 km/h, then you can also deactivate it easily at the steering wheel. I'm testing here the Bang & Olufsen sound system. Good 3D sound indeed, so that's nice. Yeah. So we like it, and it's very clear, you know, very clear. So if you need something very clear music, also to differentiate the individual layers of the music, individual instruments, that's also a way to go. Rear seats, first of all, inside of the doors, you also have this stitching here at least. It's also somewhat soft. And then you have this cover here. Oh, there we go. Proper sunshade, that's nice. Then we also have these leatherette surfaces on the inside, the nice three-dimensional surface here that is also used in the Bentley Continental and also in the Q5 as well, and the A5 as well. And then here inside of the doors in the lower part, this is just the hard plastic stuff. Bang & Olufsen sound system, even more speakers here in the rear. And then we see there's a top tether at the co-driver seat, the passenger seat. It's also ISOFIX in the front and ISOFIX in the rear. And you can click that open here, like this. Is a nice solution, actually. And then in the middle part, you can fold this one down. Nice adaptive cup holders. This is good quality. And also here, the thing that you fold down, when you push it down, that's good quality. So I like it. And here, when you pull this one, then you can also open just the ski hatch like that. Then in the lower part, this is a reminiscence of the previous generation, because this same climate unit is with touch, yes, but it's quite complex, I would say, and also has like this nice clicking sound, although it is not a clicking stuff you do, you know what I mean? 2 USB-C chargers here as well, also with good power, big middle console. And then the question is, how much space do we still have? Well, this one is here, the one with the panoramic glass roof. So to the glass roof, it's actually good for the headroom you still have with 189, 602. Here to the side, and it gets a little bit closer. And when you sit usually like this, you know, you're closer to that area. So this is what you should measure. And then there's a hand over my head that works, so it still works for tall adults. And this one also being here the panoramic roof. And at the moment there is this shade in place, the electrochrome shade. And I think from the rear perspective, you can very well see that here. When I open that one now, it opens bit by bit. I can also close it again. And you can also stop that in the middle, if that would make any sense. It also does block the sun in a way that it doesn't get too hot in the interior cabin. However, it will still get hotter in comparison to the normal fixed roof, if you go for this option in here. Then legroom, very important. You can still sit here as a tall adult, and the thing is that the difference between the A6 and the A5, told also in the static review, is this. This way I sit in the A5, and that way I sit in the A6. So it's like a hand in front of my knees is the length difference on the interior, and that makes total sense because the wheelbase difference is exactly 4 centimeters or 1.5 inches. Yeah, and then of course from the space and from the interior cockpit, you might indeed think, hey, isn't an A5 just enough for me? Yeah, you can really understand that. And maybe also when you see the trunk soon, that it won't be like too big differences. But I can tell you in driving, it will be super interesting to also take a look at that comparison very soon. The trunk is at 500 liters, and if you have the mild hybrid, like most European models have, even only at 470 liters. And that is significantly lower than with the predecessor, but it's still versatile. Soon again the sedan for you. Today the Avant, the Estate, or the Wagon, or the shooting brake, however you want to call it. Here is actually quite cool that this one here raises automatically and goes down again when you close the lid. It's still good in square dimensions, but you can see it has this, you know, falling roofline style, better aerodynamics and so on, cooler design, and that has the disadvantage that you do lose some liter figures. Here the trolley also fits in vertically underneath, under the covers, no problem. The width is about 1 meter or 40 inches. You see here just a little bit more. The height right here is about 27 inches or 66 centimeters, and the standard length is actually quite decent. You're here at 1 meters 20. This one here you can lift up. Then you have, for example, these splitters there underneath. You can, for example, use. You can also fold it like this and fold it up like this. Yeah, might look different in the non-MHEV version, that you have more storage than underneath there. You can also take out that whole thing for cleaning reasons. It would be possible. And then, very important, also integrated light. That's nice on both sides actually, and also on both sides here to fold it right and left. There we go, and they fold relatively flat indeed. And then here almost the full ruler fits in here, and that's 2 meters. So still well usable, even though we have lost some liters. Dynamic mode. That was 50 to 100 kilometers an hour with the V6 driving the all-new Audi A6. 4.7 seconds would be the acceleration figure of this V6 3-liter engine. It's a mild hybrid system with a significant buffer battery already, and especially if you not go to the dynamic mode, but if you are in the efficiency mode, then you even experience more electric moments, so to speak, like when the car is coasting, for example, or when you are also like driving towards a traffic light and the engine is being shut off and so on. Let's see, does it here? Yeah. So here, for example, RPM go to 0. Yeah, and then when you go on the throttle again, like this transition where the engine goes on and off is different from a normal start-stop system where it's more about being stationary at the traffic light and so on. Here, these transitions are way smoother how the engine starts again. Yeah, I mean, good acceleration. And the first thing that comes to your mind is the air suspension, and it's an option here for the all-new Audi A6. Maybe we can also drive the non-air suspension model later to compare, but this is also here a major difference if you compare, for example, an Audi A5, because here in the A6 you can get that air suspension, and for example here, dynamic mode, we have a little bit stiffer than when we're going into some nice corners here. Of course, you feel the weight of the vehicle. There, maybe in A5 is a little bit more dynamic, but the length difference is not that large anymore. But in a dynamic mode, a little bit more response, suspension is stiffer. And Audi promises that the span between comfort and sportiness is even wider now with this suspension. So it means softer in the softer setting and stiffer in the stiffest setting. And so far, it's working very well. Here in the dynamic mode, the car is not that like boat-alike, has this just stiffer approach, and it's actually fun to steer it around. Also, the steering is even more progressive, so the steering input, how direct the car feels, has been increased, and that feels really nice. I mean, it is somewhat a large vehicle, yes, already, and still it's really fun to drive, pretty cool, and it is extremely smooth. Of course, we have to talk about the quattro all-wheel drive system as well, because there's also so much like to talk about that. Yeah, you don't have the classic quattro anymore, like the 40-60 standard, and it was also varying a little bit, but more to the rear actually. Here now, you start with the quattro ultra, which has also the capability to send 70% of the power to the rear wheels, so that is possible. But it will be more in situations where you really hammer the throttle. If you're more rolling, for example, and slower speeds, it will somewhat have a stronger front wheel bias than the SOFA system. However, we already been testing that in the all-new A5, for example. When you really accelerate out of these corners, you don't feel a front wheel bias, so that system is working quite well, gotta say that. In here now, something special, you have the sports differential. It is together in this package again. Tech Pro package is combined with that. Rear axle steering is also combined with that. And then you also have the torque vectoring, that when you are in the corner accelerating out, you have more power on the curved outer wheel. And that goes up to like a 19% difference between left and right. Pretty interesting. They have worked on the NVH, noise, vibration, harshness, so the sound deadening. And they say, according to their measurements, it's 30% more silent or 30% less noise. And it's really very silent. We have also the rear axle steering here. I haven't really talked about that in detail. And it is set up in a way that up to a threshold of 60 kilometers an hour or 37 miles per hour, it steers in the opposite direction than the front wheels. And above that, in the parallel direction. Below, it reduces turning circle. And for example, here when we're also in a tighter corner, so when I'm driving here now 50, as the sign also says, then I feel that the rears, the rear wheels, they are turning in the opposite direction, but it makes the car more agile. At the same time, they have found a setup where it does not feel unnatural. Sometimes when you drive vehicles with rear axle steering, they almost feel fishtaily a little bit. So they perform very well in the reduction of turning circle, which is here -1 meter with a tech. But at the same time, they make the car a little bit unnatural. But here I think they found a good setup where the car still feels natural. 70 to 120 once again. There we go. Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's really nice. Like that smooth acceleration. You can also see the ambient lighting here, red in the dynamic mode, like this river hoop here in the front and all the way around. It's also pretty nice. On my acceleration here. There we go, 60 to 120. Yeah, really nice from this V6 power. That's also the reason you would go for this very engine here and not for one of the entry-level engines. Now we will drive a second vehicle here for you. This one in Glacier white, by the way, and also only with 20-inch wheels, so one size smaller, but still large. But the main thing is now to drive the 2-liter TFSI, 204 horsepower, front-wheel drive only, so no all-wheel drive, no sports differential then of course, no air suspension with this vehicle here, testing the base suspension for you, and no rear axle steering. So how does it drive when it's more in a base spec? And how big is then the difference A5 to A6? Let's start here with the 2-liter TFSI, 204 horsepower, and as I just said, no rear axle steering, no air suspension, no sports differential, and so on, base suspension. So first of all, suspension-wise, you feel that the air suspension, of course, gives you this more floaty ride. Here it's still comfortable, definitely. We have 20-inch wheels here, so one size smaller. That also helps. If you want more comfort, you could also go for smaller wheels. And are we missing the air suspension? In a way, yes, because with the air suspension you get this very floaty, sophisticated ride. But in general for a car, this suspension is still good. And then the second aspect, it's also tuned softer than in the Audi A5. So this one here definitely gets closer to an Audi A5 because they also share so much technology and the wheelbase difference is also not that large. And here with the base suspension, it really moves closer to an A5. So you can also argue if you go for a high-spec A5 versus a low-spec A6, then you might say, hey, if you want the comfort, go for the low-spec A6 in comparison to that. And the S-Tronic, the dual-clutch transmission that is always sitting here now in these vehicles, as I said, it doesn't feel as good as the converter automatic from BMW, but comes close to the feeling that you also get, for example, when you have a multi-clutch from Mercedes. But Mercedes is using both, so they have some engines with the multi-clutch and some, especially the sporty ones, and others with the classic converter. So there you have to deeply look into the model portfolio there. And now dynamic mode, 40 to 120. Yeah, I mean, it was also slightly uphill, gotta admit that. I would say it's still okay, but of course something completely different than with the V6, definitely. And the consumption here for the 2-liter TFSI, which by the way also does not have any fake exhaust now here at Audi. 8 liters on 1 kilometers, which is somewhat the same result we had with an Audi A5 Avant, for example, most recently with the same engine spec, and you will see very soon this is not a big difference to the V6. Consumption here with the V6, you can drive it with some 9 liters on 1 kilometers. And about the pricing, we already have the German prices, for example. The price on other markets will come later. Start here at 58,000 euros for the Avant version, the sedan, and later to come, probably a little bit less expensive. And when you start then with the A6 V6, 72,000 euros without extras. And the one problem is the air suspension is like a separate option. But then if you go, let's say this Tech Pro package, or if you want to have the sports differential in the rear, or the rear axis steering, they combine so many things that when you have one click in the configurator, it automatically forces you to go for the other thing. And then if you pick some options, suddenly you end up with 6, 7, 8, 9 options. And then you end up with the test vehicle as it stands here right now, full spec, 105,000 euros. It's a hefty price indeed, but if you look at the competitors, let's say I recently spec'd the BMW 5 Series with the 3 to 6 cylinder. That's a plug-in hybrid there though, because it's the only combination you can get with the 6 cylinder in Europe. That was also like 100k list price, something like that. So it is in line with the competition, and so it's also still, or once again, very competitive with the main competitors like the BMW 5 Series or the Mercedes E-Class.